Hey guys, welcome back to Hoosier Hardware, and today we're talking about the GTX 970. In a recent video, I looked at the GTX 1050 Ti and whether that can play games at 4K resolution with acceptable frame rates, and surprisingly, it actually could in several titles. So today we're giving the same treatment to this GTX 970, and this is an EVGA variant. This is the SSC, I believe. However, pretty much all 970s, provided they have adequate cooling, will perform more or less identically. Now today I am throwing a few more high demanding games at the 970 because I do already know that the 970 will outperform a 1050 Ti, albeit it is also drinking a lot more power than that 1050 Ti. And it's also worth noting that you can pick these up used for about $150 on eBay in case that's about your budget and you're looking for more performance than a 1050 Ti. As with last time, my test bench is an i5-8400 paired with 8GB of DDR4 RAM running at 3000 MHz. Actually, I think it's 2933, but you know, pretty much 3000. Now, the games I'm throwing at this card this time around are going to be Overwatch, Rocket League, GTA 5, Fallout 4, and of course, one of my favorite games of all time, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So let's go ahead and head over to the benchmarks to see just how well the 970 performs in 4K gaming. Leading off with a couple of esports titles, we have Overwatch on the high preset, averaging 90 FPS at 4K with a 1% low of 73 and a 0.1% low of 67. And since, of course, my 4K display at least only displays at 60 Hz, this is more than enough for me and provided a great viewing experience. On to Rocket League with the render quality set to the quality preset and render detail set to the high quality preset, we averaged 73 FPS with a 1% low of 64 and a 0.1% low of 60, and again, it was a very good experience overall. It is worth noting that for both of these esports titles, but especially Overwatch because it's a first-person shooter, as 4K displays move on above the 60 Hz mark, you may want to play with some of these settings, maybe knock down Overwatch, for example, to the medium preset to get a few more FPS if you are watching this in the future with a higher refresh rate 4K display. Now moving on to the more demanding titles, we have GTA 5 at normal settings and no anti-aliasing, giving us an average of 85 with a 1% low of 53 and a 0.1% low of 45 FPS at 4K, but I do want to point out that GTA 5 definitely had some areas that were much more demanding, that I saw the FPS dip definitely below that 85 mark for an extended period of time. So just because the average is 85 doesn't mean it's going to be forever locked up in the 80s with just occasional dips down below. If you're in a higher demanding area of the game, then you will certainly be playing at a lower FPS. Think of like low 70s or high 60s in those cases. On to Fallout 4 at the medium preset with no anti-aliasing, I saw an average of 57, a 1% low of 44, and a 0.1% low of 41, and Fallout 4 is one of those games that's sort of a slower paced shooter game, and because of that, this was a great experience even though we weren't hitting the 60 mark, which I typically like to game at, but it was very smooth overall, and again, because it was a slower paced game, it didn't really impact the gameplay all that much. And finally, we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at the medium preset, averaging 29 FPS with a 1% low of 24 and a 0.1% low of 14. Now, this is the only title that the video options only allowed me to run it at 4096 by 2160, which is true 4K resolution instead of the more standard 3840 by 2160. So there are actually a few more pixels being pushed in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at 4K than the other games. And I will also note with that, you'll notice the 1% low is at 24, which is somewhat close to that 29 mark. The Witcher 3 actually played very smoothly in 4K, pretty much locked at that 30 FPS mark. So you're going to have to decide if you have a 970 and you're wanting to play The Witcher 3 here, do you want to play it at 4K and be more towards the 30 FPS mark, or do you want to maybe knock down your resolution a little bit, maybe to something like 1440p, but as a result get a higher frame rate? So really, you're going to have to decide whether you want frame rate or eye candy, but the beauty of PC gaming, of course, is that you have those options. So wow, the 970 actually performs quite well and in fact did again, much better than I thought it would. Much like the 1050 Ti outperformed my expectations in 4K, so too does the 970. Now these tests are, aside from revealing that you can play 4K games at a very reasonable hardware from a price perspective, but it's also revealing that playing 4K isn't necessarily graphically the most difficult thing in the world to do anymore. In fact, PCs give you that extra flexibility that you need to play around with settings to get games running at 4K. For example, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, if you're not happy with that 30 FPS mark, then you could actually lower the settings down even a little further and probably get a little bit more of a boost in the frames per second that you're seeing in your game, so you may be able to get a little bit smoother of a frame rate, provided that you're willing to lower the details a little bit. So that pretty much wraps it up for the GTX 970 here in 4K gaming. I'll go ahead and leave some Amazon links down below for cards that are brand new that cost roughly what you can pick one of these up for. 1050 Ti, for example, or a 1060 3GB version as well cost about the same as you'd expect to pay for one of these on a place like eBay. And as always, guys, if you like this content, give it a like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know if you have a 970 and may be interested in trying out 4K gaming on your GTX 970. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware as usual. And also as usual, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.